Hi, everybody. Hello. Welcome back to another issue. I don't know, what do you call it? Episode, I guess episode, right? Episode of The Magic Morning Wood. As always, my name is Ron.
Cron.
Is Ron? Did I say Ron? My name is Ron, and with me is...
Arrive. This week's top choice, top of the bill choice, is Ron's. Tell us what it is, how it relates to what we last spoke about, and all that good stuff.
Well, actually, that's actually, I'd like to make that a question for you, Clive.
Okay.
I want to make it like a quiz.
All right.
Stay with a quiz.
Right.
Because as our regular listeners, if there actually exists out there, may remember, we use a weak link from the last movie to introduce us to the next episode, right? So, so my movie, my last episode that I chose was Tropic Thunder.
Yeah.
And so here we are, the next episode. And so my weak link is the movie for this episode, which I chose, is the movie called Freaks.
Yeah.
Freaks from 1993, but probably filmed in 1992. If you want to go there.
I did not go.
But released in 1993, starring Alex Winter, the Bill from Bill and Ted, and as well as a bunch of other people. In a minute. But before we get into the movie and all the stuff that's involved, I'd like to ask you, like, I'll give you bonus points if you can guess what my weak link between these two movies is.
Okay. First, before you do that, can you move? You're in a position where you're slightly off mic, and it.
Am I? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Is that comfortable?
Check. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. Is that
okay? Sorry, I may have been relaxing too much.
Right. Yeah. Don't you dare on.
Okay,
this has to be a chore and uncomfortable. Otherwise, I don't get any joy.
How unprofessional of me to lean back.
You need to put on a hair shirt as well, like they used to in the old days.
Right, yeah, and whip myself with a rope with knots.
Yeah.
Okay, so so anyway, so as I said, which maybe you didn't hear, because
I did hear it.
Okay, which is that so what do you think, Clive? Bonus points if you can figure out what my weak link is.
I'm guessing it's something fairly obscure, because that's why you have that smug look on your face that I'm not.
No, I was curious. I was like, I chose this, and then you didn't question it, and you jumped in with your response right away. And I was like, I wonder if he can figure out what this weak link is. So I thought we'd open this with a little bit differently, with a little bit of a quiz to see if you can figure out. I'm going to challenge you.
I suspect that it isn't this, because it would seem kind of self-evident. So I'm guessing it's probably something more obscure than that. That's why you bring it up. But I suppose the only thing that jumps to mind was in Tropic Thunder, What's His Trousers plays a kind of failing actor who ends up in the jungle and kind of reinvents himself in a heroic fashion. And in this film, Alex Winter is also a kind of not a failing actor exactly, he's quite a successful one. That was the only link I could see, but it's not that, is it?
No.
But I'm sure you're going to enlighten me wrong, which is why
because it really was, because I'll be honest, I had no idea where to go with this, with the movie for this episode, because there is the fact is Tropic Thunder has a all-star cast, right? A huge cast and lots of, I could have gone any number of the actors or directors or themes. There's like, I was overloaded with a plethora of choices that I could have gone with, right? So, and so I was a little unsure, and so I decided to go with the most what do movies. Not tentative, but what's the word I'm looking for? Not tentative, but
Tenuous.
tenuous. Thank you. That's where tenuous of tenuous links.
Is it something like both films have the same gaffer or something like that?
No, not that much, but
Okay.
but it's close to that.
Okay.
Well, first of all, they're both movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, so actually if you remember in the beginning of Tropic Thunder with the Jack Black Fatties fake trailer.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So in that part, there's he goes to a restaurant and there's a snooty waiter.
Okay.
If you remember in that small sequence, a snooty waiter who has to serve the fatties. So that actor, his name is Jeff Kahn, and Jeff Kahn played Nosy in this movie, the guy with the big nose.
Okay.
And that's it. That was literally there. So
that is stretching the definition.
Pretty weak. So it's because I was like, I really didn't know where to go because I could have gone anywhere. I mean, there's so many different things. I could have gone down Nick Nolte or Robert Downey Jr. or go back to Steve Cooney or Steve Coon. What is his name? Steve Coogan.
Yeah.
Coogan. Or go down the director or the writer or I was actually considered because we talked briefly about Bamboozled being and you talked about that a little bit, so that we could go there, and so I decided, and so I was just like literally searching through filmographies of every single actor that was in that movie, and I came across this movie called Freaked, and I was like, this movie sounds kind of interesting, and I don't know how it escaped my attention. It's my first time to see this movie. I don't know how it escaped my attention the first time around. So I was like, this sounds interesting. I might want to watch this movie, so that's why I chose it.
Had you not seen this film before?
I never. Yes. I was. I said this to you before we started recording about Dune. That it's sort of. I had the same response to both of these movies, Dune and this one, is that as soon as I started watching it, about 5 minutes in, I actually out loud said to myself, because I like to talk to myself a lot. I said to myself, I can't believe I've never seen this movie before. And so, Freaked is the type of movie that I definitely would have owned the VHS in my personal collection when I was in high school or whatever. But for some reason, this just totally escaped my field of vision.
All right, I have to admit that's a shock to me. I was almost sure that this was a blast of nostalgia.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the movie that. It should have been a blast of nostalgia, and I was like, this movie would have been exactly in my wheelhouse in the mid to early 90s, or the 90s. But for some reason, it just escaped me. I don't know, maybe just the places that I went and my movie watching friends just always just sort of was just outside of our realm of discovery. I think it was, especially in the 90s, you had to sort of. There's no internet, there's no IMDb, there's no stuff like that, so you had to kind of find your own ways to find these types of things. So this movie was never like a big release or anything, right? So it was so I guess it was just one of those things that just never showed up anywhere, or I just never realized it. Or maybe just never showed up in my local video store or whatever. So I was shocked, and I walked in. I was like, I can't believe I've never seen this before. So I went and I emailed all of my my cinephile friends from when I was in high school, the movies that we used to watch these types of movies, and I said, "Have you guys ever seen this movie?" So,
Had they?
And they none of them responded because they all hate me now. So.
Right. Happy ending.
And they're all like, "Fuck off! Who are you? I don't remember who you are. Who is this guy?" Anyway, so anyway, the movie is Freaked, starring Alex Winter, as well as has cameos or either small or big roles by people such as Brooke Shields, William Sadler, and Keanu Reeves, Deep Roy, Morgan Fairchild, Randy Quaid, and I said Mr. T, etc., etc. And of course, the one to end them all. And this was the one that just sort of like, oh my God, like it just sort of like, it just, something was niggling at the back of my mind. I was like, wait a second, this reminds me of something. So I guess the love interest in this movie is played by Megan Ward.
Megan Ward.
I guess, right? Yes. And I remember when I looked it up, I was like, Megan Ward, that name sounds really familiar. And I couldn't remember, where do we know that name from? I couldn't remember where. And I went, and I actually, before I started watching it, I went and I read your review for this.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I wanted to see if you had mentioned it. And sure enough, you had, of course. And interestingly enough, it was the entry in your book right before your choice, right? So it wasn't even just, not
Right.
even was it a late movie, it was also, they were next to each other in your book, right? Yeah, and Megan Ward, what do I know Megan Ward? So I had to do a deep dive on Megan Ward, and I remembered that Megan Ward sort of faded from the public. She's ended up on General Hospital or something on like a soap opera, and it sort of faded from her movie career. But I remember Megan Ward was in the early mid 90s was it for me, and it was so much that I've totally even forgotten about her. But like her in this movie, and I remember it was, I guess I found her in Encino Man, must have been, right? So
yeah,
it must have been Encino Man around then. I remember during Encino Man, and that's another reason I thought it was very shocking that I missed this movie, because I was in love with Megan Ward. I think Ward was like in Encino Man, and also in this movie, when you, I don't know if you have, I think we talked about this before, but when I was in like high school and university, I had this sort of, I think a lot of us have this sort of internal image of what our perfect person looks like, right? Or the kind of mate we're looking for, right? Kind of thing, right? So, and so I could even, I knew mine exactly down to a T, to the point where I could draw a picture of her, right? So, and if I had drawn you a picture, it would have literally been Megan Ward from this movie, right? So, so in the mid 90s, like this was like, yeah, that would have been, yeah. And so again, shocking that I couldn't believe I actually missed this movie the first round. So.
Similarly for me, actually, we might as well go down this tangent now while we're on it. Me too. I also had quite a crush on Megan Ward back in the day. I primarily remember her from, she was on a show called Dark Skies.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you ever watched Dark Skies.
I don't think I ever saw Dark Skies, but.
And it was something I don't know how it would hold up now. I suspect it wasn't that great, but it was something I remember back in the day liking more than the X-Files. It's slightly in similar territory. It's about a politician and his wife who have to flee when they find out that, you know, aliens are actually behind everything, and there's people, you know, it's kind of cross between V and X-Files, and it was obviously made because of the success of the X-Files, and she was one of the main characters on that. And yeah, for some reason X-Files was always something that I wished I would have liked. Like, I wish I could have brought into
it, right?
But it was never quite, it wasn't terrible or anything, but it was never quite as good as or as interesting as I'd hoped it would be. So I was always more of a Dark Skies guy. And yeah, like you, I had totally forgotten about Megan Ward until watching this. And I was like, fucking hell, she's cute as fuck. This film, with her little Che Guevara beret, and you know.
Yeah, try to make her into like this kind of militant, I guess, right? Militant protester or whatever, but that equals beret, I guess, or so. Right. But I used to have this thing that I used to tell my friends all knew about. It was called the hair, right? And I always, so, and it was basically Megan Ward's hair in this movie was like any girl had that hair. I was like, that's it.
Kind of, what is it, like a bob, I guess you'd call it?
Yeah, like the blonde, like shoulder length, like one length bob, you know, kind of thing, right? So it was like, yeah, it was perfect, right? So yeah, it was nice to see her again in this way, and kind of rekindle my
fused to a man about 10 minutes in. But, she was also, I remember, if you want to go down the Megan Ward, she was, I also remember her being stunningly attractive in the Trancers films. She's
Okay.
she's in some of the
Remember that.
sequels. I don't think she's in the first one. She would have been too young for that. I think she plays Jack Death's wife in the
Okay.
Transfer sequels, I think.
I don't think I've seen the Transfers movies, but
Ah,
I think I also vaguely remember her from that movie Joe's Apartment with
yes, yes.
yeah, Joe's Apartment,
Yeah, she gets covered in roaches, right?
with Jerry O'Connell, right? Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah.
No, yeah, she's got a few kind of cult credits.
Yeah, back in the day. So it was nice to see her. It was like, oh yeah, I totally forgotten all about her. It's nice to see her again. And it was nice to see Alex Winter, kind of playing a little bit different from Bill, but anyway, sort of taking the leading man role. I assume this was sort of, I can't remember, but I assume this was sort of his project. I guess
Well, he co-directed it with Tom Stern, right? But yes, I think he was pretty much a kind of the guiding force behind it. I get the feeling, because I remember he was on some television shows in the UK promoting it when it came out, and
right.
he came across as a very kind of likable personality. He was on a TV show called Mondo Rosso, and that was a TV show that, if you remember, before I spoke about a book that had a chapter on the Enema Bandit in it.
Right.
But the guy who wrote that book, who is now a very famous talk show host, was kind of, even in those days, he was kind of a bit of a staple of kind of TV posts, and he had a short-lived show, a kind of spin-off from that book called Mondo Rosso, where he talked different types of exploitation films each episode, and they had guests on, and they had one episode which is all about freaks and freak shows. And I think Alex Winter came on it must have been around the time that this film came out in the UK. So they talked about both the films that we're going to talk about today, for example, and some
right.
stuff. Yeah.
So anyway, let's get into it, I guess, right? So
get the plot out of the way then, Ron.
Yeah. So basic plot is Alex Winter is a kind of a kind of a struggling actor. I guess he's sort of considered like a handsome leading man, but he's sort of falling from grace, I guess, a little bit.
I guess so. He's famous for the Ghost Dude movies.
Ghost Dude, yeah, Ghost Dude.
Which is a nice bit of self-referential humor.
Yeah. What is it? Boo
Dude.
Boo Dude or something, right?
I thought that's pretty much on the money, right? Like,
yeah.
If I remember thinking about it now, at that time, I think this was a transition thing for Alex Winter, like, because Alex Winter, I think, and he is now a somewhat established director. He's made a bunch of documentaries. There's a new one out about Frank Zappa, which is apparently good. And but I think from the get-go, that was his thing, was to direct, right? And then kind of after Bill and Ted, he kind of found himself in that kind of, in the spotlight in that way. I think it must have not rankled exactly, but I think he was keen to maybe parody that image and get away from it. Yeah. And so I think that this comes out right in that period.
Right, yeah. And did he also co-wrote it too, so yeah, so I guess so yeah. So but yeah, so anyway, so he signs this sort of makes this contract with this sort of I don't even know, these kind of like shady group that are have shady. There's a shady like pharmaceutical company. Would you say?
I think so.
Yeah, I guess that's what they're.
I guess.
Big Pharma, yeah. So and they've got this some kind of like drug thing, which may or may not, which is implied that they sort of create mutants.
Right.
It's sort of
Like
and so
24, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he despite the his agents or his advisors saying don't do it, he signs up for it, and then he
he's asked to promote it, isn't he?
He's being the spokesperson, right?
To be honest, it's a bit of a kind of plot device, really. I couldn't quite figure that out.
And it didn't really have anything to do with the actual plot of the movie, so it just sort of like a tack on. So I guess it's just to set up that this chemical does this type of thing, I guess was the idea, right? So
It's satire slant, I think, which is, and we'll talk about it a bit more later, this pros and cons of this film, but on the kind of slight more con side of things is the attempts at satire, I think, right?
Right, yeah. And so anyway, but so he's then becomes very unpopular, I guess, with the political crowd, because a lot of people are like protesting this
Right.
particular chemical drug, whatever. And so he goes into hiding a little bit by like pretending to be wraps himself up in bandages, whatever. And so and then comes across this cute girl played by Megan Ward, who's like kind of like one of the protesters who purchased this drug, and through a series of events, I guess he and his good friend, played by
Michael Stoyanov, is that his name?
Michael Stoyanov, Michael Stoyanov.
Who, of all the people in this film, was the one, like, who the fuck is that? Like, I have no idea who this man is. Although he was on a sitcom called Blossom.
Yes. Yeah. He was the older brother in Blossom. Yeah. So
okay, I thought it's something you might know a bit more than I've done.
Yeah, well, back in the day, I think I did. But he has some. He's done like a bunch of like kind of. He's still working. Like he's still got a filmography. So I think he just does a lot of like sort of smaller roles on TV shows and stuff like that. And he was in The Dark Knight and stuff like that, right? So I think he's still a working actor, but he's just never really broke out, I guess, right?
Right. He is the slight weak link here in a way.
Yeah. But he is supposed to be sort of like the douchey best friend was the idea.
Yeah.
And I thought it was quite amusing that in order to emphasize that he's kind of a douchebag, they put him in a Red Hot Chili Peppers t-shirt, which was which apparently I think Tom Stern had directed one of the Chili Peppers videos or something. So I think that's what was there. But anyway, so they go out and on a trip together for some reason, the three of them, and then they come across this sort of sideshow run by Randy Quaid, who's kind of a circus sideshow, and they stop in to see it, and immediately just get kidnapped and injected with this drug and turned into mutants for no reason.
It's funny. Already, just a few minutes into this, we've mentioned Megan Ward, Randy Quaid, Alex Winter, Red Hot Chili Peppers. I can almost feel the flannel growing.
Yeah, really.
Like I feel like I've been transported back. It's a very 90s.
It's as 90s as you can get. Yeah, it's very, very 90s. And so anyway, so they and they don't really, it's funny that, anyway, the douchebag friend and Megan Ward get fused as a sort of Siamese twin person.
Right.
And Alex Winter gets injected with another dose where Randy Quaid decides he's going to turn him into like a super mutant or a super freak. And half of him becomes basically like a gremlin, basically, is I guess very kind of gremlin-esque. Very, but leaving the other half of his face not connected, not changed, which I assume is so you can still relate to him, I guess.
Yeah,
I guess
Randy Quaid's he's kind of a freak maker along the lines of Dr. Moreau, right? I guess.
Right. Yeah.
And he runs this sideshow out in the middle of nowhere that I guess has people come to it from somewhere, or I don't know quite where the customers to the freak show come from.
Yeah. Because it's like they were supposed to be customers of the freak show, but then they were turned into freaks. So I don't know. Does he just make freaks, or does he ever actually have customers for the freaks? So there are shows. I mean,
later, right? There's people there.
Yeah. At the beginning, you're like, why wouldn't he just show them the show rather than But anyway, so then they join the other group of freaks, including the bearded lady played by Mr. T, and a cowboy, which is literally a cow person.
Yeah, I love cowboy.
Talks like this.
He's full of like cowboy wisdom as well, isn't he? Well, boy, you should, I played by John Hawkes as well.
John Hawkes.
Realized that was John.
Yeah.
I recognized Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Reeves as the dog boy, Ortiz the dog boy. And and there's a guy named Derek McGrath who plays like a human worm.
Yes.
And then there's Lee Ehrenberg plays the Eternal Flame, who just like his farts are
Yeah.
like every time he farts, it's just fire kind of like coming out of his ass. And
I also think it's hilarious that the frog man is just a guy in a wetsuit who speaks French.
Yeah, but he has a really long tongue, right? So yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he still eats things.
No, not him. That's
No?
the frog, right? That's the fat guy outside.
Yeah.
Ronnie henchman. No, he's not in it much. There's a few characters.
Oh, okay, yeah. He has like a wetsuit. Yeah, okay. He's got like the snorkel or whatever, right? Yeah.
And then later on in the film, he happens to speak French. He's frog. Yeah. So there's a lot of kind of throwaway gags, both the bad that you don't kind of get straight away, right?
Right. And there is someone playing a Pinhead, Rosie the Pinhead, and then a nice cameo by Bobcat Goldthwait as Suckhead,
Suck boy,
who basically plays a guy whose head is a sock puppet, and then at one point it gets taken off, but it turns out that his head is a hand. It's just three hands. He's got the puppet on his hand, right? So that's why
it's hilarious. His character, I love. There's a brilliant sequence where they all have their backstory, and like his is so they have these each has this elaborate stories, and his is just I went and then he turned me into a sock. Sorry, I'm not very good at telling stories. the only character who manages to get one over, I think, is the Hammer, because there's a hammer there. You have like the bearded lady, and the hammer, and his
was a wrench.
Used to be a spanner.
Yeah. That was great. Yeah. So you're like, it zooms in on this hammer. You're like, what is happening with this hammer? And then it does like the watery kind of dissolve to the backstory, and it's a wrench, and it's got Randy Quaid taking on. He like laughs maniacally at this wrench, and then it comes back. It's a hammer, right? So
and they cut back, and everyone else is crying.
Yeah. That's good stuff. It was actually, I was like, this movie could have been so bad, right? So, but I laughed a lot at this movie. I was so shocked how much I laughed at this movie, and I was like, this movie's great. Still can't believe all this many years later, I've never even heard of this movie. So, yeah, it was a waste of my life. I could have been watching this movie all these years.
So just to finish up, so basically, they have to escape. That's kind of it, really, isn't it? Main plot point.
They what? Sorry.
They escape. They have to. They try to escape.
Yeah, they escape.
Yeah. They force.
And they have to kind of fight. And then the evil big farmer showed up to kind of help him. And they want him to make like these like super mutant guys or something silly like that. And then they sort of fight against him, and then they escape, and then they find the antidote, and then they beat Randy Quaid, and then they all go back to normal or whatever.
William Sadler's in charge of the bad guys, right? He's the
Yes. So which is also, I guess, William Sadler. This was only like 2 years after Bill and Ted 2. The Bogus Journey, where William Sadler had been Death.
Oh, right? Of course, I'd forgotten he was Death in that. Yes, I like William Sadler a lot, and he does villains very well. It's nice to see him kind of parody that.
Right. Yeah. So I guess they were all
and the framing devices that they're on Brooke Shields' like talk show as well,
right? Right. Yeah.
So
and it turns out that Brooke Shields is not, and then at the very end, the big spoiler: Brooke Shields is not Brooke Shields. She's Randy Quaid in disguise or something.
Yeah.
So she's like, and she's trying to kill them or something. But it was just good, silly fun, and I laughed a lot. I thought it was really fun. I enjoyed it all the way through.
Great effects stuff as well throughout. But Screaming Mad George, the Chiodo brothers, David Allen, Tom Rainan. I mean, a lot of people worked on this.
The practical effects were quite impressive for a lot of the stuff, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, like low budget was.
They're that great mix of like they're cartoonish, and they're obviously not like photorealist in a way, and but they're really great, colorful kind of creations. A little bit inspired. Some of them inspired me reminded me of like Drew Friedman's drawings.
Okay.
They have that kind of pop-eyed kind of.
It really reminded me of, and I'm surprised you didn't choose this as your connection, because I thought it was like definitely basket case parts 2 and 3.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I thought it was like like these could have been right out of parts 2 and 3 of basket case, the freakshows, right? So
that's interesting.
like those like really big, elaborate, kind of like like almost like made with putty kind of stuff, right? So I thought
yeah. No, that's a good call. Actually, I hadn't considered that. My absolute favorites, though, and this is an element I'd remembered from back in the day watching it, was the Rasta eyeballs.
Oh yes, and the Rasta eyeballs.
Oh, good. Rastafari! Every time they come with their machine guns.
Machine guns.
It's just, that cracks me up every time. That never gets old. It's brilliant. So just I'll just mention this first then. So as I said, I remember this from back in the day. I really enjoyed it. I hadn't seen it in a long time.
Right.
And
how did it hold up?
Well, it's interesting. I hadn't remembered quite how broad the comedy was,
right,
somehow. So when you chose it, I was actually quite pleased. I was, freaked. Oh, wow, I haven't seen that in a long time. And then I was, really looking forward to it. And then for the first 5 minutes, my heart sank a little bit, because it was, I don't remember. I mean, this comedy is really broad and really kind of wacky, kind of, and not that funny at first, right? Like, I was like, yeah, I don't know about this. Wow, is this actually dated that badly? And then when they finally get to South America, and fuck, man, wow, man, what was hot. I'd totally forgotten how much I fancied Megan Ward, Rachel Ward's sister, I believe.
Is it?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I might have just made that up, but I think she is. So I was thinking, oh no, but then as soon as we get to the freak stuff, when they get to the freak show on the right, then it starts to, for me anyway, that's when it started to pick up. That's when it gets into that stuff, then it's like really, really, really funny. And then for the rest of the film, you still have such a barrage of gags, and some of them are just, and some of them are funny, and some of them are,
some of them work, some of them don't, but that's
But that's fine. After they start hitting, it's fine, and you get acclimatized. And I just had when something dumb that isn't funny, I'm just like, oh yeah, rather than, I'm on side with the film. It's kind of worn me down at that point. I'm like, so it's, so that opening like 5 minutes or so aside, I had a great time. But it was interesting for me just that first 5 minutes kind of wrong-footed me, and I don't remember if that was the case when I originally watched it.
The 5 minutes being like that, the first meeting with the big pharma, that
whole scene, you mean? Opening with Brooke Shields, and then the meeting with, and then when they get to South America and he's in the bandages and all that stuff, was just like kind of slightly nails on a chalkboard.
Oh, okay.
For me, until they got, I don't know how you felt about that. And then, but I couldn't remember when I'd originally seen it if I'd had the same initial response, but then it was all swept away by what came afterwards.
Right.
Or, I don't know. How did you feel? Did it?
I didn't. I liked it almost immediately. I started laughing right. I was like, oh, well, I was kind of like, wasn't sure what to expect, and as I said, I'd never seen it or never heard of it before, and I was kind of like, oh, like what's going on with this movie? I'll give this a shot. It'd be fun. And I was like, whoa, this was gonna be right up my alley. I knew it was gonna be right from the Henry Rollins theme song.
With Blind Idiot God.
That's right.
Blind Idiot. It's Henry Rollins and Blind Idiot God, I think, isn't it?
Blind Idiot God, right? Yeah. So.
And Butthole Surfers and stuff as well, and they're very
Butthole Surfers.
Who are
it was very nice
in it. I think it was. I think originally it was supposed to star the Butthole Surfers.
Oh, really?
Which would have been a very different.
Starring them or just featuring them?
I'm not sure, but apparently that's how it started out. Was they were going to be in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And again, I mean, it's interesting how I was wondering about this as well. Well, how well it would play with someone not of our shitty Gen X generation, like because there are certain things in here, like they haven't, like the celebrity squares, parody joke.
Right, yeah. There's a lot of the jokes which
Yeah,
I could tell were very timely and
yeah.
wouldn't hold up today. That
No.
wouldn't make any sense today. Like
Okay,
there's
Bob
jokes
Villa.
that I got because they were jokes of nostalgia for me.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, okay, I get it, and I know where that was coming from. But it would make no sense today. Like no one knows
Right.
what Hollywood Squares is anymore.
No, and Bob Villa.
Bob Villa, yeah,
very
definitely.
kind of, so and there was a couple of there's like one slightly with there's a couple of gay stereotypes, isn't there, where Randy Quaid says, if anyone of a nervous disposition among you, and these two very kind of mincing camp gay men get up and kind of walk out, little things like that.
And those those two guys were actually Alex Winter and Tom Stern.
Oh, I didn't notice. Is that right? All right. I didn't notice that went over my head. So yeah, it's not. But what I mean is, I think for us, it's very easy for us to overlook that stuff just because we were there at the time and place. And I was curious if it would play as well to someone who hadn't lived through it. If it was just a young person, what do you think? Do you think this would work? Or
I don't know. Like I don't know what. Like I'd love to ask like a person in their mid-teens or 20s to watch this, who likes these types of movies, to watch this movie now and see if it actually holds up. Because I'm not sure how much of it was, even though the movie itself wasn't nostalgic to me because I hadn't seen it before. A lot of the references were right. So I'm not sure if that played that was a positive or a negative. It was, for me, it was a positive, I guess, but I don't know if it would be a positive and negative overall for the movie, right? So,
yeah, I mean, because there's a lot in it that just works really, really well. Like all the kind of freak stuff, the stuff that concentrates on that is solid, and the whole disguising themselves as milkmen to escape, but there's like 12 milkmen.
This is just, I think that's great, silly fun. Those are good gags.
So I think that stuff would still work, but I'm just wondering if all the other stuff around it would be. What I mean is, because we know where it comes from, it's very easy for us to go, yeah, where can I? But you're wondering if for someone of a different generation, if it would be too in the way of the good stuff. Like
yeah.
For me, it's very easy to overlook it and like forgive it, because there's that mixture of, that's kind of naff and crap, but it's naff crap that I'm very familiar with and is slightly nostalgic. And it's nice to see Randy Quaid before he was a psychopath and hiding from, it's just, yeah, it's in a way, I always find myself like, they always say you can't escape from who you are, right? No matter how far you run or whatever. And I'm not a proud Gen Xer in any way, shape or form. I've always had a problem with, but I can't help, to a certain extent, okay, I have to fess up. This is my culture. These are my people.
I
do apologize, but
I like this.
So I'm kind of interested if it would play, because like I said, the stuff that's good in it is properly good, I think. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's like 80 minutes or something.
Yeah, it's nice and short, really. But I'm surprised this movie didn't get more. I wasn't more publicized. Like, I'm surprised. As I said, I can't believe I never heard of this movie, because this would have been exactly in my wheelhouse right at that time, and I would have been looking for movies just like this, and I still don't know how I missed it. So I think they really did it disservice themselves by not like promoting it more or doing more with it. I don't know, because I mean, there's like, look at the cast. Like everyone. I'm surprised it didn't turn into. You even got like Keanu Reeves in his like in heavily in makeup and almost unrecognizable, but at the same time he's sort of, I'm surprised no one has gone back years later and saying, hey, look at this Keanu Reeves thing he used to do, when he was the dog boy, right? So
and pre-internet days where you could look that stuff up as well, it was like, I mean, everyone knew it was Keanu Reeves, but it was more a kind of like a rumor, kind of secret. You know that's Keanu Reeves as Doughboy. He's not in the credits, and
yeah. And also, like, you can't recognize him at all. Like, he's full like body makeup and stuff.
Right. His voice
had he started, because at Bill and Ted time he was sort of, he was just, you know, one of the two, right? So, but it was only after he sort of became his own thing. So, what had he started to break away at this point? I can't remember.
I guess he must have been on that trajectory towards Point Break and stuff like that, right? So,
right,
it was still a few years. Yeah, I think he would have still been considered the Bill and Ted guy at this point.
He still would have been just Bill. It would have been Ted. So. I mean, Ted.
Yeah. But what was I going to say? Yeah, it's interesting that you say that about. It's interesting. I come across this more and more, and especially this period of time, there seems to be like there's a certain there are certain films and TV shows or comedians or whatever that at this point, like North American stuff, that seems to have gained more traction or was more widely known outside of the US and Canada, especially in the UK, it seems. So like, I think this was fairly well promoted in a way in the UK, more so than it might have been done at home.
It must have been, because I can't for the life of me think of a reason why my friends wouldn't, at least one of my friends wouldn't have stumbled across this movie. Right. So it's yeah, something must have happened in Canada where we just didn't get it or something.
I was listening to a podcast recently where they were talking about the film Memphis Belle. Do you remember Memphis Belle?
Yeah.
And
Steven Spielberg, is it?
Say again.
Was that no, not Spielberg? I do remember the movie. That was like a war plane movie, right?
Yeah. And the way that hosts were discussing it a little bit, it was almost as if it was a film that lots of people hadn't heard of, or wasn't that well known, or wasn't that famous. And I don't know if that's true, but if it is true, that surprised me, because again, that's another film in the UK. Memphis Belle was like, you couldn't miss it. It was a proper huge big release, and I don't know if it would have been overlooked in the US.
I remember Memphis Belle being quite big when it came out. You know, it had like Eric Stoltz and Billy Zane and Sean Astin. So I think it was.
And then you have people like, for instance, around the same time, you have people like, for instance, Bill Hicks, the comedian, huge in the UK, playing massive theaters, and you know, fairly unknown in the US.
Yeah, Bill Hicks is like like people who are like comedy nerds know Bill Hicks. Like, yeah. I don't know how successful he was in America, like really himself, but people who know anything about stand-up comedy know Bill Hicks and know he was like super influential on like stand-up comedy.
But he had a wider acclaim in the UK. Like, you didn't have to be a comedy nerd to know who he was, kind of thing. And I'm always surprised to meet people of the same age as me who know George Carlin and stuff, but they weren't really familiar with Bill Hicks.
I think Bill Hicks got a little overlooked, but he became like people know, like, who study like comedy and know lots like follow like some comedy. Like, he's like, oh, Bill Hicks. But he was sort of like they're sort of secret, I think, right? So I think he was never really made it big.
So it seems to me that we both thoroughly enjoyed Freaked, and unless we could drool about Megan Ward for a few more minutes, or we could move on. Do you have any?
Well, let's move on. It's a short and sweet movie. I think we can be short and sweet episode today too. So I think
toilet break run.
Okay.
So
let's take a break.
I shall be back.
We'll be right back
after these messages. You can talk about how much you love Megan Ward while I'm gone.
Right, Megan Ward. Let's see. Let's look up. Let's look up Megan Ward, shall we? And we'll find out some facts about Megan Ward. Let's see. Hello, Megan Ward. Megan Ward born September 24th. Did you know that Megan Ward speaks Japanese?
I do, because you just told me when I was in the toilet.
Oh, you could hear me, could you? Okay.
Is she Rachel Ward's sister, or did I make that up?
I can't find anything about that, but it does say she's the youngest of 4, so it's possible. I don't know. It doesn't say anything about Rachel Ward specifically, but
I feel as if that were true, they would probably have that on the IMDb.
yeah, usually it says sister of Rachel Ward.
Oh, there we go. What do you know? I must have totally made that up and believed it over the years.
Oh no, it can't be, because Rachel Ward is British.
Well, it could still be, but yes, that was the one thing that occurred to me as well while I mentioned it. Was
no. And she's also 12 years older, so I guess it doesn't matter. But no, I don't believe they are connected. Okay, well, welcome back and back in.
Oh, that was a fascinating aside there. Thank you, Ron.
Thanks. Thank you, Megan Ward.
So we're gonna stop being creepy now. Well, no, we probably still will be a little creepy, but
never.
less creepy.
Less creepy.
Creeped. So we, so Freaked. I mean, no brainer, really, right? Freaks.
Well, for me, it was. I mean, yeah, I can see where you would go to that one, but when I was watching Freaked, I was like, wow, this movie so reminds me of Basket Case 2 and 3. I thought for sure you'd do something like that, right? So.
But we've already done Basket Case 2 and
3. But that was our special edition that was never really released.
No, it was. It is released.
Oh, that's right. You released it, did you? Okay.
Yeah, it's out in the wild.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
That was my thing. Is, are you sure that we haven't done? Sorry, let me introduce your movie.
Oh no, go for it. What were you going to say? Are you sure we haven't done
the movie you're going to introduce right now? So I don't want to take it away.
No.
Oh, yeah, because when I was watching it, so won't you say what it is first? Right?
No.
Okay. The end. Bye, everyone. Nice to see you.
It's my secret. I'll take it to the grave. So I chose the 1931 film Freaks.
Freaks.
Yeah.
Right.
And you think we've done it before?
Well, I don't remember ever talking about this before. But first of all, this seems like the type of movie that we should have done by now.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of that.
Well, yeah, I guess, but this one for sure, definitely for sure. I thought for sure, and the thing is that I've seen this. This is the 3rd time for me to see this movie,
mm-hmm.
and the first time I watched it, because I could talk about that later, but the second time I watched it, I couldn't remember why I watched it again. And my guess was that it must have been because we were doing it for this, but I don't remember ever talking about it, but I can't understand why I would have sought it out to watch it a second time.
Maybe before we used to, before we kind of found the measure of this, we kind of used to, or I used to set ridiculous homework assignments, right? So I'm thinking, maybe did you watch it as background for either the basket case episode, or more likely when we did Santa Sangre, maybe?
That's possible, maybe as a background one, because I'm sure that I watched this movie again after my first time, and I can't imagine the reason why I would have, not to say that it's bad, but it's not a movie that I would go out of my way to watch again unless I had a reason to watch it again.
Right.
And so I was like, but I don't remember ever doing it on the podcast. But although it seems like the type of movie we probably should have done by now, but I couldn't remember. But I was like, I don't remember talking about it, but I remember watching it again. So that's why why I got confused about it. So.
So when was the first time you saw Freaks, Ron?
I can't remember.
Okay.
Although I will say, interestingly, you mentioned about Santa Sangre. I do have a friend back in Canada who is a movie guy, and he does often like movie reviews, like on Facebook. He's just sort of like not professionally, just sort of like he's one of those like you at least have published a book for your movie reviews, but he's like one of those people that thinks that everyone wants to hear his opinion about movies, so he puts it on Facebook, right? So
a hobbyist, I guess.
A hobbyist, yeah. So he does that a lot. He used to go to the what you call it, the Toronto Film Festival a lot, and used to do a lot of like reviews for those movies and that. So, but anyway, so he had once upon a time made a list of sort of great horror movies or movies that had sort of inspired him, or that he had or sort of had or inspired him, or sort of had surprised him, or that were sort of like his top 10 list or whatever that. And on that list was Santa Sangre, which was why I was inspired to choose that when we chose it for our episode years ago. And also on that list was Freaks. And I believe it was because of him that I watched Freaks, because of that review. And I think that's when I saw it the first time. And yeah, so it has been a number of years, but I can't remember how long it's been. So, but it's probably within the last 15 though.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because Freaks is probably on my top 10 as well. Well, at least when people ask me, it's always difficult to think of your favorite. When people ask me, Freaks is always one of those films that
just is like your go-to answer.
Oh, it's one. It's not necessarily my favorite film, but it's definitely in that collection of films that I come back to fairly often and find kind of endlessly fascinating. And again, watching it this time as well, it sent me down a rabbit hole of looking things up, which I'm sure I've looked at before, but I just enjoy looking them up again.
Right.
I think I must have seen this for the first time when it was on. I think it must have turned up on late night television, and I'd wanted to see it for years. And then, because it was in all these horror film reference books, and I mean, whether it's a horror film exactly is kind of something, I guess.
Yeah, I thought we would talk about that today, because like it keeps being classified as a horror film, but I don't really see that. I think
it's kind of default classification in lieu of anything better is do you know what I mean?
Right.
Anyway, we'll get so. And I've seen it so many times over the years. I've even had the pleasure of once seeing it on a kind of big screen. That not a huge one, but there used to be a theater. It might still be there. There used to be a theater in Nakano. That's here in Tokyo, folks. And this is way back, like 2000, 2001 or something. There was like a theater where you could actually lie down to watch films. They didn't have chairs. Really? Yeah, you just lie down. You had like kind of like a quite comfy kind of futon, and the floor was kind of sloped, right? So it wasn't flat; it was sloped. So you could still see the screen, but you could lie.
Right.
It's a very relaxing way to watch a film. But we went to watch an all-night show. It's almost too relaxing because you just
fall asleep, right? you're on a bed, right? So
I know as experience with you in a theater run, you would go like a light.
Definitely fall asleep. Yeah.
So, but I remember seeing Freaks. It was an odd collection of films. They showed Claire's Knee, the Eric Romer movie, which was in French with Japanese subtitles. So I didn't understand a word of it. I don't think I've ever seen that film in any other way.
Okay.
I sat through that.
There's Knee.
They showed a really great. There's a short film called an Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. After the famous Ambrose Bierce story. I think it turned up as an episode of the Alfred Hitchcock Presents TV series as well. At some great, like 30-minute, 20, 25, 30 minutes, something like that short film. They showed that, and they showed Freaks, which was already a favorite of mine. Unfortunately, they showed this really fucked up old print where towards the end, like the big reveal, it suddenly went into these splices. It just jumped from blah, 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 and you're like, huh? What? I mean, I knew the film already, so it didn't really matter.
Right.
But I can imagine if you'd never seen it before, it would have been a very disconcerting experience.
Oh, right.
So I don't know where they got that print from, but it was a fairly useless print.
Okay.
Yeah.
The whole movie or just the ending?
Particularly the ending, I remember it just suddenly becoming really garbled, like from when the freaks are kind of, menacing the strong man. It's right. Chicken, briefly seen chicken woman, and it's like, oh, what the fuck happened? Anyway, yeah, so I suppose I better set the scene. So Freaks, 1931, directed by Todd Browning, who, of course, most famous, I suppose, for directing Bela Lugosi in Dracula, but a very interesting, one of those guys I find fascinating. We did talk briefly about one of his films he made with Lon Chaney, The Unknown, when we did Santa Sangre, because Santa Sangre was kind of a bit of a semi-remake, or certainly inspired by The Unknown, right? I can't remember if you actually watched The Unknown as your home for that.
I don't believe I did, no.
Okay. Todd Browning did actually spend time in the circus as well. Like he had an act. I think he was like buried alive or something, and he was a clown, and he was a proper carny, right, for a while.
Circus folk.
Yeah, he ran away from home and joined the circus, classic story, and then ended up a protege of W.D. Griffith, I think, and ended up. Most of his movies were made in the silent era. He made a lot of stuff with Lon Chaney. But like I said, now probably most famous for the Bela Lugosi Dracula film. But he also made other interesting talk films as well, The Devil Doll, and which, who knows, I'm not sure what I've chosen next, but we may do another Todd Browning. I'm not sure, because I find him kind of fascinating. So
this is neither here nor there, but because Todd, I've always thought of Todd as a rather modern kind of name, and having someone in the 30s be named Todd was a little bit. Was there a lot of people named Todd in the 20s and 30s? Like, I don't know. It just seems like there's sort of like a movie, like a type of name that you would name your kid in the 80s and 90s. Hey, Todd.
Well, isn't it? It's Theodore, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, okay. Because there's a lot of people that just name just Todd now, right? So
because Ted, Theodore, Logan, right? We were just talking.
It was Ted. That's Ted, not Todd.
Yeah, Ted. I think can it become Todd as well?
I don't think so. I'd always heard Todd as just being just Todd, but usually with two D's.
Right, I don't know actually. And we have another Todd. It's based on a.
Another book by Todd. Yeah, I saw that one. So I don't know. It's just like it was neither here nor there. I was like, Todd just seems too. That's one sort of disconnect I've always had with this movie, was that it always seems that it's so old, but it seems like it's all the people associated have like these really modern names. So
what a peculiar thing to notice. You have the strangest mind, Ron. Did you?
I have the strangest mind.
By any chance, did you have a chance to read the short story Spurs?
I didn't. I was skiing, so I didn't have.
Oh, that's right. Okay. No, it's fine. I had never read it before. Actually, I read it last night because it's a short. It's like 20-minute read or something. And this is the short story this is based on. Although the film is very different. It takes a kind of basic premise but the short story is really good. I would even the show's done and dusted. I would recommend you read it from the link I sent you because it's a great little short story. There was an earlier film as well, a Todd Browning film based on a Todd Robbins short story called The Unholy Three from 25. Also co-starring Harry Earls, the midget or little person star of this film. So speaking of which, so yes, Harry Earls plays a circus midget. And Daisy Earls, his real life sister, plays kind of his betrothed, that they're going to get married. In real life, they were two of four, I think 4 brothers and sisters, all midgets. They were called the Doll family.
Right.
And they played Munchkins in The Wizard of Oz, for example. So, but in this film, Daisy Earls plays, like his lover, his girlfriend. But and the film is all set, and at the circus, and a traveling circus. But Harry Earls is in love with the trapeze artist, kind of beautiful, statuesque, blonde Olga Balkanova, who is regular sized, right? As the original poster for Freaks had it, the tagline, "Can a fully grown woman love a midget?" I mean, boy, you couldn't get away with putting that on a poster now.
Right,
and rightly so. But the trapeze artist, played by Olga Balkanova, she kind of gets her claws into Harry. At first, I think she just thinks, oh, isn't it cute that this, she doesn't see him as a man, right? She sees him as a child or a baby or a freak. And but he clearly is all Google-eyed for her, right? And he sends her champagne and baskets of fruit and stuff. But she eventually figures out that he actually has an inheritance coming, right? He's owned quite a lot of money. Also, interesting to note that they were born in they weren't. They're raised in America, I think, but that's quite a strong German accent, Harry Earls. So you get the feeling, that he's some kind of European royalty or something like that.
Right.
So the trapeze artist finds out, so he's going to have a lot of money. So she schemes with the strong man Hercules, as played by Henry Victor. They're kind of having an affair, and they plot that she's going to marry him, so she becomes next in line. And then I guess the idea is to poison him, right? Because she thinks,
and that the midgets they don't have a very strong constitution, and they'd be easy to poison.
They don't live long. They alternate. They sometimes call him a dwarf and sometimes call him a midget, even though they're kind of slightly different things, right? I mean, both phrases.
Are they? I thought now today that midget is no longer PC. That dwarf is actually what you would call them.
No. They're different things. So a midget, or what they call a little person now, is basically where everything's in proportion. So, for instance, Harry Earls is a midget. Everything's in proportion.
I see.
Angela Rossito, who's in this film, the dwarf, he's a dwarf because parts of him are regular size, but then the other bits, like he has short legs, a short arm, but he has a regular size head. And so I think that's the different. Dwarfism is when it's not all in proportion, and then midget is when it's all in kind of proportion.
So what would be like Peter Dinklage, for example?
I think Peter Dinklage has a form of dwarfism, I think, because his upper torso is pretty much regular size, but he has very short legs and short arms. His head's quite large as well for his body, right? So I think he's more a form of dwarfism.
Um, I didn't know that. I thought that midget was sort of like the slang term, and that is no longer PC. That
Right.
they're
No,
all
no,
kind of
there is a difference, which they kind of disregard in this film, even though it's very sympathetic to its
mm,
freak folk, and obviously Todd Browning knows his stuff.
right.
But also on top of that, another interesting thing worth noticing is someone once asked some director who worked with Peter Dinklage. Someone asked him, what what does he like to
What,
be? Is he a midget or a dwarf or a little person? What does he like to be called? And the director very tellingly said he likes to be called Peter. You know.
hmm,
So yeah. So and yes, eventually the plot comes out, right? That that the two kind of able-bodied cast members, they're the real kind of freaks
hmm,
in a way. They're the
right.
and the the so-called freaks exact their terrible revenge. And at the very, very end of the film, so the film opens with this Carney Barker telling us, it's actually quite good. The credits come up and then they get crumpled, don't they? Like a newspaper, like he
Mm,
crumples the credits into his hand and throws it away, which is quite a nice little
right.
effect. And then he gives this big come on, and he's like, look at this woman. And you don't see her at the beginning of the film. You just hear a woman screaming, right?
Mm,
Like something horrendous. And at the end of the film, it turns out that the way the midget, the freaks and everyone, they've exacted their revenge is they've turned Olga Balklanova into, I don't know what you'd call her, a chicken woman, a
like
hen.
a chicken woman of some kind. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. She's
basically, it seems like it's such a it's such a fantastic review. I remember the first time I saw this, I was like, what the, so many questions, like, how, what, who?
how, what,
Yeah,
how, what, how, why?
right. It's just, but it's brilliant. It's such a strong. And it's interesting as well, watching it this time, we watched a newly kind of restored print of it. It has an extra added coda, right? Like after you see that, it has this kind of bit where Daisy and Harry Earls get back together, and
Mm,
I'm thinking, no, cut that off. You
yeah,
don't
yeah,
need
yeah,
that.
yeah. I think that was originally not there, right? So that
Yeah,
was
I think they put that back in, and you're thinking, no, don't do that. The way it ends with when you see the chicken woman or whatever, it's perfect, right? It's perfect.
right.
So, yeah, so just before I get to your opinion, right, it's obviously worth noting that the cast of this film is mostly real circus freaks, right? So and yeah, the other two kind of able-bodied characters, you got Wallace Ford playing the clown, the nice guy clown, and Lila Hyams as well, another strikingly attractive woman, and they're kind of, the good guys, I guess.
Right. I found this was one thing I found a little difficult was that what's her name, Lila Himes, I think.
Uh,
That,
Lila Hyams, yeah.
yeah, she looks very similar to Olga, and I found myself sometimes being confused which one was which because they're both like they both have the same blonde hair, the same hairstyle, and I was like, wait, which one is this again?
Oh,
You can
really?
only really,
Oh,
yeah, you
I
can
could.
only really tell about by the accent really. So
I had no problem because for whatever reason, Olga Balklanova has that very kind of statuesque, classical kind of beauty, but not my type at all. Whereas I find Lila Haim very cute. So
okay,
for that
yeah,
reason,
for me they looked very similar to me. So
okay. Yeah. So and also we have the other kind of non-disabled. I don't know if that's quite the right phrase either, because I don't know if does being a dwarf or a midget count as actually being disabled. It's a can of worms, isn't it, Rod? try and avoid.
The same can of worms we were in last episode. With
trying to avoid causing any offense here. But the other kind of a quote unquote normal person then is Roscoe Yates. Roscoe Yates is the stuttering guy.
Yeah.
That's the alibi, and you wonder if he inspired Elmer Fudd
Yeah, I thought that the same thing. I was like, it sounds exactly like Elmer Fudd, yeah. So
Because Roscoe Yates was quite famous in his day, I think, and that was his shtick. Like he did that
oh,
in hundreds of films. I've seen him in
oh
other
really?
doing the same.
He didn't actually talk like that though.
Well, he did have a speech impediment when he was younger. He overcame
Okay.
it and then made it part of his act, apparently. He's even in, speaking of offense, I think he's in blackface in Check and Double Check, the Amos and Andy film from the 30s.
Okay.
And he does the same stuttering thing, except now.
Stuttering and blackface.
And blackface, yeah.
Doubly offensive. Right?
Yeah, but yeah, so he's kind of fun in this, and he's married to one half of. So you got also in this
In the
film,
movie or in real life?
in this film,
Yeah.
married to Daisy and Violet Hilton, the Siamese twins, real Siamese twins, British, and he's married to one, and the other one has a suitor.
Hates him.
Say again.
And the other one hates him.
Yeah, but
So
it's
he's married to one, and he hates his sister, right? So,
yes, Daisy and Violet Hilton, who starred in their own film in the 50s called Chained for Life, which I think we might have talked a little bit on Santa Sangre as well, where they had this weird speed accordion playing act. It's kind of basically based on their real life. They both, I believe, in real life married gay men. They married men who turned out to be gay, and then the marriage, kind of petered out. But their interaction with Roscoe Yates and this other guy who's courting Violet is kind of fascinating, and it's a good example of the way this film works, I think, in showing you just kind of slice of life, what carny life is like, which is a lot of the film is basically just kind of having a look, right, at what circus folk are like, or what it's, and it is kind of fascinating. You do find yourself kind of trying to figure out the ins and outs of how does it work if you date a Siamese twin, and at some point you're going to want to have sex with your wife, but there's like another woman attached to her, right? So
yeah, exactly.
like a curtain, or like
I think that's how they used to do it. Yeah, there was a curtain or something, right?
And of course this is something that this was Daisy and Violet Hilton's life, right? I mean, so it's kind of fascinating to think of yeah, there's a lot of wider questions raised. And then you've also got Johnny X, like the half guy who doesn't have a lower torso or legs, who walks around on his arm.
Right.
He was later in life became known as he was an artist, and apparently there's a kind of folk art in Baltimore, apparently, which is painted screen doors. Apparently that's a particularly Baltimorean kind of folk art tradition, and apparently Johnny Eck was like known in that world as a screen door artist, apparently, as well as being half a I'm not going to say half a person, half a full-bodied man, I guess. You got Josephine Joseph as the he/she, half man, half woman. I've no idea what the story is there. I don't know if he claimed to be a hermaphrodite, but I don't know if I think it was just someone who pretended to.
Looked like a costume. And
yeah,
that was it.
Yeah, but it claimed that I don't know. You've also got some what they used to call pinheads, microcephaly, right? This was in the news a few years ago, if you remember, the Zika virus. Apparently, one of the things with the Zika virus was you were in danger of giving birth to a microcephalic child, which is basically the head's smaller, right? The cranium doesn't grow, and it causes all sorts of defects and kind of because the brain doesn't have room to grow and mature, right? So you've got and at some point a woman looking after them kind of mentions that they're just children, right? She says they're just children.
Right, yeah.
You got the bearded lady. You've got maybe my favorite, Prince Randid plays the living torso, who's a man with no arms and no legs. and you get to see him quite impressively light his own cigarette.
And when he comes up to his to the door, you can call him Matt.
Hey, there we go.
Or if he's in the pool, you can call him Bob.
And you've got I'm just ignoring you, Ron.
You ever heard all those jokes? What do you call a man with no arms, legs? Who? Da, 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 da?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm trying my very best here, Ron. I'm on my best behavior. Frances O'Connor as the armless woman. You got Elizabeth Gree, the Stalk woman, who, as far as I can tell, just has a weird body, right? She just has a long neck, and she's the one who dances on the table in the wedding.
Oh, okay.
Similarly, there's a guy, the human skeleton, who I think he's just skinny, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, it's fascinating to see this kind of what gets considered a
skinny.
basically. Yes, and well, anyway, there's a bunch of stuff. But first, I want to know what did you make of? What have you made of Freaks over the years, Ron? Is this a favorite of yours? Is this something you admire? Is this something you like? How was it watching this? Tell me all about it.
Oh, the pressure. No, I mean, like it's a fascinating movie in terms of the place where it came from, right? Because of course, none of this would be was really allowed at that time, right? So it was, and I guess famously it bankrupted Todd Browning, right? So it basically ruined his life after this, apparently. So and the idea of having a movie called Freaks, showing actual freaks and showing them as the heroes versus all the sort of the quote unquote regular people as the evil people, I was like, that's it was so groundbreaking that it still blows my mind that the movie actually came to light. But I guess I was doing a little bit of research as well, that I guess Todd Browning had been so successful with other movies, I guess with like the Lon Chaney movies, that the studio just kind of gave him carte blanche and just sort of said, yeah, we trust you, do this.
Right.
And then when it came out, they were all like, oh my God, what have we done, right? And then they basically, he ended up getting like a really short leash after that for the rest of his career. And then he ended up making like, definitely the audience is, I guess my understanding, the reason it's considered a horror movie was just because of the way the audiences sort of reacted when it first came out, because it was the idea of watching a movie with real freaks. First of all, I mean, these are the people that you would go to the actual freak show and scream at them, right? Scream, or not at them, but because of them, right? And putting them on screen as like the heroes of a story. It was like, and there were people. There were claims that one woman claimed to have like a miscarriage because of the movie, or another one wrote like really nasty letters to the Todd Browning, back in the day before trolling, stuff like that, and all because of the position he took, which is essentially the correct position, right? Which was these are the you shouldn't treat these people like animals, right? So
well, it's fascinating, isn't it, how times have changed in so much as now I think the film would almost have flipped the other way. Like now I can imagine people taking offense because they might think it is in some way exploiting
them,
and kind of being a bit more kind of voyeuristic, or like a freak show, and it's interesting. We'll get to that.
I think the difference is that before they were offended to even have them in the public eye, putting them in front of people, making me watch this, versus now they would be offended that they're being used. And that so.
Which is it's very difficult for us to go back to that mindset, right? That the thing that the one thing I hope and pray might turn up is, apparently when the film as we see it now runs about an hour. Apparently it was 90 minutes, right, originally, and they cut out a lot of stuff. Apparently the end assault, you actually see the strongman is castrated, and there's a whole lot more.
Really?
Yeah. And if that turned up in someone's attic, that would just be amazing.
Like, how would they have shown the castration? Would they actually have shown the bits being cut off?
No, but I think it was more because we don't even get that from the film at all. We just think he's been killed, I guess.
Yeah, you don't really know what happens to him.
Apparently they castrate him, and there's like from what I read, there's a scene where like some of the freaks do this falsetto singing and stuff to make fun of him because it all sounds very intriguing, and I'd love, as good as the film is as it is. I mean, you do wonder because it doesn't seem as if there's anything missing. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't seem.
Yeah, it sort of works as a whole as it is, right?
Yeah, so I think so. But apparently there was 30 more minutes to it originally, and then they recut it. And then famously, because it's an MGM production, right? They didn't want anything to do with it. They sold it to this guy Dwayne Esper, this kind of notorious roadshow guy who toured around the country and set up tents and put in movies, kind of father of modern exploitation films. Made this fucked up movie called Maniac in 1934, and that it ended up on that circuit, under a variety of different titles, right? Like Nature's Mistakes and Forbidden Love, and it was kind of almost like something that a major studio literally threw away, like.
Right.
Like at arm's length. We don't want this.
Yeah.
And it was banned in the UK until 1963. It's one of those things that really took its time to get accepted.
Right. But again, I was telling you that my friend, the hobbyist, was the one who turned me on to it, was recommended it in the first place. He had, I think, if I remember correctly, he referred to it as one of like the scariest movies he'd ever seen, which I didn't really get, right? Because even now in my third viewing, I still don't understand why, even by today's standards, it would be considered a horror movie. It's at best a revenge movie, right?
Right.
I guess, right? So I mean, but yeah, I mean, it's really just a drama. Really, so I'd say so. Not to say that that's a problem. It's the classification. So I could see where the classification would have come from in the 30s, but I'm surprised that it's still considered a horror movie. So,
well, like I said, I think it might be more in lieu of it just not having, of it being uncategorizable. Really, it does have horror elements, and well, it brings us to that kind of final scene. So, in the final, well, kind of the almost final scene, when the freaks take their revenge, it's during this thunderstorm, right? And the circus is moving, or the carnival is moving from one place to another, and it's during this journey that they decide to wreak their vengeance. And there's these scenes of like the strong man's like being taken down by a knife thrower's thrown a knife in his thing, and then he's kind of underneath one of the wagons, and then all of these, there's the guy with the living torso and the midgets,
right. And they're kind of coming for him
towards him in the mud. And obviously that's played like a horror film,
like a horror, like that scene, I guess, but
and what's fascinating,
but at the same time, you're sort of on their side, though, or at least by now today's standards, you would be, and what Todd Browning was trying to do is you're supposed to be on their side.
Well, I think it's more than that, to be honest with you. Even though I think you are sympathetic to the quote unquote freaks, I think what's really interesting about it is, in a way, in framing it like a horror film, Todd Browning does actually make us see them through the eyes of the strong man and the trapeze artist as they're fleeing and when they're in danger. Because those scenes where they're coming towards him in the mud, like a small army kind of slowly but surely encroaching, it is kind of scary, right? It is kind of, and it's almost like, as much as I love this, maybe one of the reasons I love it is because it forces me into this weird contradiction in that scene, actually, because I'm not sure if this film totally gets away with it in terms of making the freaks sympathetic, because they're fairly monstrous. in this scene, right?
Mm.
And they're vengeful, right? Like it's almost
yeah, vengeful, yeah, for sure.
if you treat us like freaks, we will be freaks, if you see what I mean. And their revenge is pretty cold-blooded. Like, however you turn one into a chicken woman, I'm not exactly sure. But it, you know, they've at least, I mean, she may be in some kind of costume, but they've at least like cut her arms and legs off or something. And she looks kind of, her face is fucked up as well, right?
And she also was like, "Ma, ma."
Yeah,
Like, she was making like chicken noises.
So, yeah. So in a way, they have acted monstrously. They have acted like freaks. But whether that action is justified or not is kind of a fascinating. I mean, you can go back and forth about it all the time. But what I mean is, I don't think it's quite as clear cut. I don't think it's quite as like, oh yes, get out of jail free. Well done, Todd Browning. You haven't taken the side of, you know, you are. It's slightly more problematic than that potentially, I think. But that's what's kind of fascinating about it as well.
But I think that if he was trying to make it just like they are freaks and monstrous, then it would have been much more one-sided. It could have been much more one-sided throughout the whole movies, where it wouldn't have made the quote-unquote able-bodied people like being the bad guys in this case, right? You know, it would have made, you know, it was, yeah, I mean, they do like a monstrous thing at the end, but yeah, I don't think that you're meant to think they're monsters. I never got that. I don't think so. I just thought you got the impression that they're meant to, you know, be getting their just desserts, getting their due, right? You know.
But do you think do you think it is?
They tried to, you know, they were trying to kill one of them, so they've got to protect themselves.
But do you think the actions are justified to mutilate that woman and turn her into a chicken woman and whatever the fuck the strong man?
One of us.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of interesting how.
I mean, yeah, I think that's the that was the idea, is that she rejected being one of them. There's the scene, of course, the famous, as I just quoted, which is the one of us, we accept her, one of us, goobo gobble. So they're at the just to set that scene, they're at the I guess the wedding party, right, where she's married the what's his name again? Harry Earls. And she's married him.
I guess his character is right,
Hans, right? Yeah. So she's married Hans, and they're at the wedding party, and of course she's even she's like outwardly still flirting with the strong man and stuff at the wedding party and stuff, like just
they make out, don't they?
Yeah, they make out right in the middle of the wedding party, right? And so it's like this table full of the freaks, and then they have this thing where they're, you know, they're having this sort of like drinking all out of the same cup, and stuff, and she refuses to do it and stuff like that, right? And then they all have this chant to say, like, you know, which is one of us, we accept her. So basically bringing her, you have married one of us, and so now we're accepting you into our community, into our group, right? And she like refuses it and rejects it and storms off and stuff, and screams and, you know, stuff, right? And so the idea is that they were accepting her as a freak, as she was, right? And she rejected it. So that's why they turned her into an actual freak, I think. So that's why I mean, of course, I'm not saying that you should turn people into chicken people, but the idea was that they were actually making her a physical freak, so that she really knew what it was like, and, you know, and because she had been accepted into their group and rejected it, but now she has to, right? So I mean, I'm not saying that they should have done. I'm just saying you should turn people into chicken people, but definitely it was the correct ending, right?
Well,
it was the way
it works. It's poetic justice as a piece of drama. It's fantastic. But it's always occurred to me that it's not quite straight up and down. Like, in a way, it's them at their least sympathetic when they do that at the end, right? They do become this kind of crawling menace that's going to turn you into a chicken monster. Which, again, I don't have a problem with it, and I'm certainly not trying to make a case that this film isn't sympathetic. I think it is. But it's interesting how it gets there, and how there's that weird conflict in a way. You know, again, it's that, like, okay, if you're going to treat us as monsters, we will become monsters. We will become as monstrous as you see us. My God, that wedding party sequence never fails to give me goosebumps every single.
Oh yeah.
I think that's one of my favorite scenes. It's so devastating. They're there and they're all go booga one, and then she just filthy, slimy freaks. She just freaks out, and they just all go. That bit just heart stopping every single time for me. I think that scene's just, if I had to compile like my favorite scenes in films, that would be up there. I just think it's amazing. Yeah.
Okay, I guess what I read was that actress Olga was the character or the actress's name?
Olga Balkanova is the actress. I can't remember what her name is.
Okay, but anyway, Olga, she apparently couldn't even look at them when she was filming this movie. Apparently, she was almost like that in real life. I think apparently so.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, again, like I said, this sent me down so many interesting rabbit, and it does every single time I watch it. And I don't know of one, but I would love. There's a book in this, right? There's got to be a book all about this film, surely.
Oh, I'm sure there is somewhere. I'm surprised you haven't read it already.
Well, exactly. That's why I'm thinking if there was one, I probably would have read it, or at least a documentary. It's. Would you class this a classic? Because I would say this is a classic.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say it is. Certainly, but not. It wasn't at the time. I'm sure it was. Amazingly how it survived through. I mean, I'm surprised this whole movie isn't. I mean, all that extra 30 minutes is lost, but I'm surprised the whole thing hasn't just been lost. Just to this, throw, like people just throw it out. We don't want this, throw it in the garbage and never look at it and never see it again, right? I'm surprised that it still exists.
Yes, it's its own little freak in a way, right? That's, they've tried to lock it in the attic, but it's it's still there, and it's kind of slowly. I don't know how many different ways to say it. I think this is a tremendous film, and it was a pleasure to watch it again.
How many times is this for you? How many viewings?
Oh, I don't know. We must be getting close on a dozen by now, I would have thought.
A dozen, yeah.
And probably a dozen more times. And it's what's interesting about it as well for me is, in some ways, it's a slightly shoddy is not the word, but it's not exactly the most cinematically exciting film for the most part, apart from the end scenes and the thunderstorm. A lot of the rest of it's a little bit flat, right? It's a little bit flat.
Yeah, to be honest, there's parts of it which is a little bit of a slog to watch. Like, okay, let's just get on with it, kind of thing. So even though it's only like an hour, there's still like a lot of scenes which are like, okay, well, let's get on with it. I don't even know what they're talking about, or.
I think it has a cumulative effect, though, right? I think
it does.
You spend enough time in that world, but as it's what I agree with you that, like, the first couple of times, because the first time I saw it, I was, what's this then? This doesn't quite, what's all this about? And like you said, in terms of if you think you're going to get a horror film as well, it's just you're not quite sure what it is for a little while. And then it kind of slowly kind of reveals itself. And I think cumulatively it's brilliant, but it is when you're watching it kind of, especially for the first time, you're not quite sure. It's a slightly ramshackle kind of feel to it, right? You don't quite know where it's going to. It's interesting that you said, though, you don't think you would have gone back to it of your own accord. So clearly, even though we both very much admire this film and we both agree it's a classic, there's obviously something about it that, for me, is just like, it really speaks to me for whatever reason. And you're slightly more distance, I'm guessing, because you're saying you wouldn't go back of your own. It doesn't speak to you.
Well, I don't think I got anything out of repeated viewings of this movie. I think I
Okay.
got everything. And I think as what you were saying is that the first time you watched it, you're sort of that you're like, what is this movie all about? And then it was probably a little bit of a shock at the ending, right? Like a little bit of a twist, right? And I think once you know the twist or once you know what's coming, I think the rest of the movie, I don't think a repeated viewing adds anything to it. I think it just sort of like I think the idea is that first viewing, right? So.
Oh, that's interesting because it works kind of the other way for me. For me,
really?
the film in a way that like a song you really like is that you can listen to again. For me, I know exactly what's going to happen, but I enjoy watching it get to that conclusion. I just enjoy seeing it play out. And I guess not for you then so much.
Yeah, not as much, but definitely it. I mean, it was. Yeah, I wouldn't say I necessarily got anything out of it after the second and third viewings, but I mean, I didn't dislike it, or it wasn't.
Right.
As I said, there's a little bit at the beginning. It was like, okay, let's just get on with it, right? So,
but obviously, it's not. It hasn't. It's not a cornerstone film that affected you in the way that it affected me.
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say, yeah, definitely.
Right.
I think I also think I had my my expectations were a little higher going in than probably yours were when you first saw it, because I had already seen it on this list of like the top 10, my friends' top 10 horror movies of all time or something like that. So I think I was already assuming it was going to be this thing, right? So
right. I think certainly it's one of those films. I think that I can certainly see if it's on like your top 10 list, it's from a very subjective point of view rather than objective. I think if you were to look at all of cinema objectively and you think about all the, either technical achievements or the way the way we tell narrative or advanced story, if you were looking at things in that way, yes, I'm not sure if Freaks would be on your top 10 best films of all time list. So if it is in your top 10, as it is in mine, it's coming from a very subjective point of view where you have something invested in this world, in Carney or Freaks or whatever, something about it, you have a taste for it. Right. And yeah, so if you have a taste for something along these lines and you haven't seen Freaks, then you most certainly should, I think.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think it's definitely a movie everyone should see.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so
it is. Yeah.
Yeah. For whatever reason, I mean, even if you don't really like film, it's certainly it's I don't know if you would say its point of view or its theme or moral is trying to expound is important, whatever. But at the same time, it was, I think it's an important film for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I agree with you. Anyway, I suppose that's about it, right? I mean,
yes. That's it.
We could talk about Megan Ward some more, or we can wrap it up.
Megan Ward versus Olga.
No. Layla Hyams. We did forget to mention, of course, that the Ramones kind of highly inspired by this film as well, right?
Oh yeah.
I think they slightly misremembered it because their thing is Gabba Gabba Hey, right? Actually, for years before seeing this film, I expected them to say Gabba Gabba Hey in this film.
Oh, I didn't know that's what it's from. That's where that's from?
It's the Google Gabba, and then somehow it became Gabba Gabba Hey. I'm guessing they just misremembered it or something like that. But,
really?
But the Ramones
wasn't as musical, the Google Gobble.
I don't know. I'm not sure actually if they deliver. It seems like it seems more like a misremembered thing, right? Like, I remember that film we saw late night. What did they sing? Gabba Gabba Hey. Yeah, there we go. So we'll use that. So I guess I'm gonna put some Ramones in here.
Sure.
Gabba Gabba weeks after weeks after one of